Well, thank you for joining me on a little Carnivore Conversation to share your amazing energy and ideas on health and wellness. We
Thank you
appreciate you
so
being here
much.
today.
Thank you
Oh,
so
it's my,
much for having me. And I've just been admiring you for a while now. And I'm really looking forward to spending time with you in person. But this is a true honor. I really appreciate it.
well, I got to tell you the same from me. And I've been watching you also. You have some amazing things to share. And the beauty is we're all sharing such slightly different views, which is brings on that all that personal touch for each of us.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you could
Absolutely.
tell our listeners and those watching also a little bit about yourself and what got you into this crazy keto and carnivore space.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot to it, but I will try to compact. So in sixth grade, I was diagnosed with osteoporosis. I remember as a young child having severe digestive issues. I didn't talk about it because I didn't know. No one asked. And I also
Mhm.
grew up in a family. My sister still has epilepsy, grand mal seizures. So I just was always sort of bottling up my issues. And this
Mhm.
continued all throughout high school. In seventh grade, I ran into really severe mood disorders, ADHD, OCD, narcolepsy, insomnia, anxiety, depression. And these were not just diagnoses, these were real symptoms. I was pulling out my eyelashes at one point, I was self harming, and I didn't sleep. And it was just really hard. So I was put on Adderall, clonazepam, and Ambien. And at the
Wow.
time, I asked them, will these be difficult to get off of? I don't want this to be addictive. And they're like, oh, yeah, no problem. So they prescribed those medications to me for over 13 years, and I continued to take them at higher and higher doses. And I was just pretty much running on speed and then crashing. And looking back, I see how much that stole my personality. I was like a zombie. And then right after graduating high school, I had a really bad breakup, first horrible breakup, and
Mm.
I was heartbroken, lost a ton of weight unintentionally. That was the first time my family thought I had an eating disorder. I will say, obviously, I wasn't trying to lose weight, but I wasn't eating well. And so I was responsible for that. Um, and then I, just worked on my health, did my own thing, and gained some healthy weight. And so, fast forward a couple years, I'm in real estate full time, engaged, and I start having suffocation attacks to the point where I cannot unclench my fists. My arms are glued to my side. I can't breathe. What's going on? And these started just after I had wisdom tooth removal surgery, and they prescribed me opioids and antibiotics, and I took them all. And I think that was the last straw of my gut. I really believe that's what happened. And these chronic, I want to call them panic attacks, but it was more than that. It was my central nervous system it was done.
Sure. Wow.
And so that's the point that I decided I'm going to get off of everything. All these medications, I'm getting rid of them because they're not helping. I'm going to get to the root of this, even if it kills me. I truly had to just let go of everything in my life at the time. The engagement was broken off. I started working with functional medicine doctors, dumped all the traditional doctors, moved back in with my parents because I couldn't function on my own. And that is when I embarked on a much more strict version of the ketogenic diet. I had been ketogenic for 15 years prior. I have relatives who are very versed in keto. But this is when I really was looking at my macros, shooting for a 4-to-1 fat to protein ratio. And it helped. It definitely helped. But that was 2017, and that's when I was diagnosed with chronic Lyme disease. So I
Wow.
started seeing all the Lyme literate doctors. I was doing treatments, IV treatments, thousands of dollars. I was doing the supplements. I went to New York City and got ozone therapy. None of these things made a difference. This is the honest truth. I spent so much money on all those things and they didn't make a difference. So I just came to a point where I said goodbye to those doctors because I didn't have peace with all these other patients. It was like it was like a waiting room where we got our IVs, and everyone would just be in there chilling. And all these people were identifying with the disease. It was like, this is
Mhm.
forever. This is our life forever. And that scared me away. I ran and I was like, peace. This is also not a solution that I can have peace with.
Mhm.
Um, so I continued to work with functional medicine doctors. And at one point, I started to lose significant amounts of weight, still on the ketogenic diet. My family thinks I have an eating disorder. Everyone's like, well, you're doing keto. That's the weight loss diet. And I'm telling them this is the only way I can function. At one point, I was bedbound. I was having non-epileptic seizures. So this high fat version of keto was the only way that I could truly function. Um, and so it was just a really, really toxic and painful dynamic within my home. I was then held against my own will in an eating disorder unit at UNC Chapel Hill.
Wow.
That is a big story in itself. I go into this
Yeah.
in my book. It was horrible. Of course, I'm there telling them I have autoimmune disease. I cannot eat all these carbs and all this food. I came out of there with more autoimmune diseases. When I came out of there, I did keto again, and that was the first time I ever got the keto rash all over my face, all over my back, surely because of the toxins, the oxalate, the seed oils. It was intense. And so my family still thought I had an eating disorder. And finally, I was diagnosed with a chronic C. diff infection. So C. diff is just a bad bacteria that was taking over the good bacteria in my gut. And I think that just the years of chronic use of benzos and antibiotics set me up to be extremely vulnerable because, to my knowledge, C. diff should not be this big bad virus. Most people can get over it pretty easily. I had 3 total fecal transplants. I did all the antibiotics. I did 13 rounds of antibiotics before I was even approved for the fecal transplants. And
Wow.
every time it would be negative for about 2 weeks, and then it would come back. So I'm going to fast forward to May of 2019. I am not living with my family, not even in contact with them because they just think I have an eating disorder.
Right.
And I move in with this narcissist who I met on eHarmony. And I am not working, medically prohibited to work, 69 pounds at 5'6". And so I'm in the emergency room because my electrolytes are all over the place. And they tell me that they need to remove my colon and hook me up to a feeding tube. And at this point, I was literally begging them to put me back in an eating disorder treatment because, 1, I would be getting away from this narcissist, and 2, I needed help gaining weight. I couldn't gain weight to save my life. And so that was the moment when I surrendered. So I realized that the ketogenic diet had become an idol in my life. I had more faith in this way of eating than God himself. And so I really felt like God was literally twisting my arm and saying, Rebekah, you need to surrender this idol. It didn't make sense, but I did it. And so I got in touch with the dietitian at the hospital, and I told her basically everything I've said to this point. And I said, you've got to let me try this carnivore diet. I think there is something to it. And she got in touch with the chef in the kitchen at the hospital, and he started sending up multiple entrees of meat, hard-boiled eggs, and butter. And I was throwing away the trays of carbs and weight gainer shakes and crap they were giving me. I was being held in isolation because of C. diff, so I could get away with hoarding these things in my room.
Mhm. Mhm.
I was
Mhm.
also hoarding some supplements, taking those like berberine and stuff. And I gained 4 pounds in 1 week. Blood sugar stabilized almost immediately. My electrolytes stabilized. The involuntary throwing up from ulcerative colitis stopped in that emergency room. So after 7 days, the doctor comes in and says, we have no reason to hold you here anymore. We can't tell your insurance anything. You're stable. You need to leave. Go home and continue your weird all meat diet. That's what she told me. So that's what I did. And it was just about consistency. But I came home with a backbone. My faith was reignited. I stood up to this guy that was really just awful, and God provided. I got out of there, and then I became a health coach in 2020, and here I am.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. So that was a really amazing story. I'm curious a little bit. I mean, that was to get to where you are today. and you're coaching and you're sharing all about the carnivore diet. But I'm curious, so you talked about keto,
Yeah,
but it didn't sound like it was working.
right.
Where did you learn about keto, and what was the keto part you think that wasn't working that finally the carnivore worked?
Yeah, good question. First of all, I have a relative who wishes not to be named, who truly is a genius. She's versed in keto. I grew up watching her do this at many times in my life. She stood by my side. She helped me get the ozone treatments in New York City, and it was all about keto. And it really did help with so many things. So I was just latched onto this keto thing. It was all I ever knew. And when I started to lose huge amounts of weight, I wanted to gain weight to save my life. So I started doing more of the keto treats, hyper palatable things. And after I came out of the eating disorder unit, I had an eating disorder. And so I was not binging on standard American diet. I was binging on keto foods because I wanted to gain weight. But they had told me things like, if you have gluten sensitivity, it's all in your head. And I just questioned reality. And I was just,
Mhm.
again, my family was stuck on this idea that I had an eating disorder. And I realized I'm not going to have a life until I gain weight. So I'm going to do whatever it takes. So I developed a binge eating disorder in a very organized sort of way. I would sit on my couch with towels on the couch, set up water and napkins, and make a bunch of keto treats. The most carbs I would have is like half a sweet potato, just to see, can I please eat without involuntarily throwing up or having autoimmune reactions? I just need to gain weight. So that was another reason why I had to give up keto, because it had become something bad for me. I don't think keto is bad for a lot of people. The other aspect of what I needed to cut out is the anti-nutrients. In so many keto foods, they are loaded with oxalate primarily. I believe is the main anti-nutrient that was hurting me. So I was doing tons of turmeric. I was doing baby spinach every day. I was doing avocado, and these are all very high oxalate. So I think those were holding back my gut from really healing and sealing, and also binding to the nutrients I was eating, so I couldn't absorb nutrients. Because I swear, at one point I was eating 6,000 calories and still losing weight. C.
Wow.
diff it's intense for people who are not strong enough. Diarrhea. I had diarrhea for 2 years. It was crazy. So the anti-nutrients is a big part of why keto wasn't working for me. And then carnivore just makes so much sense. Meat is the most bioavailable form of nutrients. And when I learned that, it really clicked. When I learned that humans are not designed to digest and assimilate nutrients from vegetables or plants, that really clicked with me. And I knew that I needed that extra support.
Don't you think, the word carnivore is you eat animal products. The word vegan or vegetarian, you eat plant products. Although vegetarian is a little strange because you can eat eggs or cream or butter or
Right.
not. That's always a difficult one. But a vegan eats plants, a carnivore eats meat, but a keto or paleo or any other word, it's not really a diet.
Yeah.
It's a mystery because
Yeah.
it says one thing, but what you actually eat is the real question.
Yeah.
And I always ask people what they eat, and their words are healthy, organic, clean,
Yeah.
and and I'm like, no, 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 no. What do you put in your mouth? Protein. Like, okay, what's a protein? So
Yeah.
tell us, how do you approach these concepts? Because again, what do they mean?
I mean, I run into the same thing when I work with people, or I have a breakthrough call and I'm asking people, tell me what a day of eating looks like for you. They say the same things you just said. And so I usually break it down and I tell them there's no difference between honey and sugar, in my opinion. Your What happens in your bloodstream is all I care about. And honey and sugar is the same thing in your bloodstream. And so I try to break it down for them and I just ask for specifics. So I just consider keto to be a way of eating. It's to me, it's like a biohack. I think that people can mitigate a lot of inflammation even when they're doing a dirty ketogenic diet, but only for so long. And this is what people don't latch onto. I think just because keto has exploded, and all these processed, horrible ingredient foods. I mean, sunflower oil, palm oil, and people just think, well, it's keto, so it must be okay. I think people are just really uneducated on seed oils in the first place. People don't even know what seed oils are when I talk to them. They're like, I have no idea what that is. And
But
it's
what
in
about
everything.
almond flour and all
Exactly.
these keto foods? And ultimately, keto should probably be just thrown out. But
I
it's just
agree.
such a search word we use it. But again, you could be a vegan, vegetarian, Mediterranean, or even carnivore and be keto because it's a
Right.
state
Right.
of monitoring, but it's not or metabolic state, which is kind of a hard one. And you mentioned eating disorder. Wouldn't you
Yeah.
say we actually all have an eating disorder?
Yeah. I think 100%. I mean, the more I think about this, I'm like, everyone has an eating disorder. Um, I mean, standard American diet, I think about, or I just think about when I ran on carbs. I remember when I worked at Whole Foods, I got 50% off. So I was living on Skinny Pop, apple straws, coconut milk ice cream, almond milk ice cream sandwiches, the quiche on the hot bar. And I think about how I felt mentally about food at that time. One, I was barely eating protein because I was broke. And two, I was always thinking about food. I would be thinking about my next meal while I was eating my current meal. That's an eating disorder. That is not food freedom. Um, and then there's also a more restrictive approach to these, carnivore, vegan, whatever, when it becomes an idol or you're identifying with it. I think that's also an eating disorder. That is not a healthy way of eating. So, and that is why I really try to hone in on this bio individual approach with everyone that I work with, because I want people to experience food freedom. And to do that, we have to support leptin, your satiety hormone, and we have to throw out this idea that there's one size that fits all. But I do think you're right. I think everyone has some type of eating disorder. It's kind of hard not to, living in America with all the stuff that we are given.
And globally, we're sending grains around the world. I mean, that's what these wars are being fought over is land and grains,
Yep.
and that's money and power. Um, and yet on keto, again, I always like, what is a biohack? That's another coined term in our sort of keto, paleo, carnivore, doesn't matter, vegan, veg world of a biohack. What does that mean?
I think that it means anything that you can do to alter your life in a positive way. But I think it's usually for people who are trying to mitigate some sort of unhealthy lifestyle or behavior. Like people that don't prioritize sleep hygiene, biohack with caffeine. So it can also be kind of abused. But I think even just breath work is a biohack. You can totally support your central nervous system. You can lower your blood sugar with good breath work. That's a biohack. It's just a life hack. It's a trick. It's a tip. And many of them are free. That's also something that I think of when I think of biohack. It's like, this is up to me. This is something I can do today.
You said something about all these diseases you have, and you were diagnosed as a child, essentially, or a very young adult,
Yeah.
pre-adolescent. Was there anyone that at any point was able to tell you why you were getting all these problems or linked to anything about your life?
I've never had anyone actually tell me. I've had some people say, you were dealt a poor deck of cards in terms of genetics. Um, I mean, I can buy that somewhat, but for everything that I dealt with, that's not a good answer. That doesn't suffice. I truly believe that it has to do with the fact that as a child, I was constantly getting sick. I grew up in Michigan. I was always getting strep throat, the flu, the cold. And what do? They give you antibiotics. I mean, I think I was on antibiotics at least every 3 months for most of my childhood. That's the only thing that I can think of, honestly. But even before the osteoporosis, I had asthma in like fourth grade or something like that. I was too young to even understand it was a bad thing. I was excited about getting an inhaler. Um, I don't really know, but I believe it has to do with all the antibiotics.
Interesting. But no one linked the food, because I always
Never.
say it's the food. It's simply we're eating the wrong food. And
Yeah.
I think we blame antibiotics, we blame XYZ. It's the food. It's
You think so?
simply it's simply the healthy food we're eating.
Yeah. I
Because
believe it.
because if you read James Salisbury's work, where he basically showed that the bacteria and yeast overgrowth inside the bowels went up through the esophagus and down into the lungs and up into into the nasal passages. It went out the rectum, up into the vagina or up into the penis. It went
Wow.
everywhere in our body. So basically, we're consuming a plant-based diet, which is basically making our body a culture dish. And so all the
Yeah.
bacteria and viruses love it. So, we have these crazy treatments, but when you finally got to
Yeah.
the carnivore and you convinced a nutritionist to give you simply just meat, it became the master way.
You're exactly right. And even as a child, I never grew up with drinking pop. We didn't have candy. My mom was very much low sugar. Um, but her version of healthy is still not even as good as like a healthy version of keto. So I was still getting a ton of anti-nutrients. I was still eating bread. So is that really even much different than a high sugar diet? Because it's all doing the same thing. To your point.
Well, that's why I always, so sugar is a plant. I don't care what plant it is. All plants break down to sugars.
Mm,
Majority of sugars aren't even sweet. I mean, it's such a simple concept. And
yeah.
it sounds like that's
Yeah.
what you've been focusing on in these biohacks is the simplicity. Tell us a little bit about what your current nutritional recommendations are, and you approach someone that's coming to one of your retreats or finds you online and is getting some coaching.
Yeah. First of all, I like to ask the person, do you have any history of an eating disorder? Does restriction or tracking macros trigger you? I need to know this before I make a recommendation. I don't want to push someone in the wrong direction. If they don't have any issues and they're just like, please tell me what you think is best for me to do. Usually I say, if you want a simple approach, cut out all the plants, go carnivore. 1 gram of protein per pound of desired body weight per day is very appropriate. And then higher fat than protein. How much higher fat is going to depend on the person. Are you fat adapted? How much extra body fat do you have? What is your energy output during the day? All these things matter, of course, and it's going to change from season to season. But it's always going to be higher fat than protein. Even someone that's trying to shred body fat, we're going to start out with higher fat than protein for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then in terms of people that want to eat things that never had a face, things that are not animal foods, I just tell them, eat it as variety. This is garnish. You're not filling up on this. You're not getting any nutrients. So ask yourself 2 questions. Is it low carb and is it low oxalate? Those are the things I usually break down for people. And then you can Google low carb, low oxalate lists. I usually almost always recommend let's stay under 20 total carbs per day. Because for anyone that I'm working with, we all want really good mental focus. We want good sleep. We want reduced cravings. We want to build muscle. And being in a ketogenic state, at least in and out of it, or fat adapted, is majorly going to help us with all of these things. Being metabolically flexible is something I want for everyone. So it's always going to start with, low carb or no carbs. But how we do that varies from person to person. Some people just need to go slow. Some want to go overnight. And then I do emphasize ruminant animals. So the types of fat that we eat do make a difference. I think that there are foundational truths, like all we need is fat and protein. We don't need carbs. We don't need sugar. Even to gain healthy weight, all we need is fat and protein. And then, we can apply that to anyone, but then there are going to be some people who are more sensitive, like me. I did not tolerate pork. I didn't tolerate chicken. I didn't do well with a lot of animal foods that some people do well with. I actually didn't do well with beef. I needed to go low histamine. I needed to do lamb and goat and veal, and that was a game changer for me. So that's also something that'll vary from person to person. But I always recommend ruminant animals, saturated fat. I love lamb because one, it's super fatty, so it's easy to get your fat. And then two, it has more omega-3s than wild-caught salmon. Everyone's, concerned about taking their omega-3 supplements. I'm like, throw them out. You don't even want to finish those. They're oxidizing and becoming rancid. So that is my approach. And then making it sustainable. So, if you want to use fresh herbs like rosemary and thyme, go ahead. That's good for your immune system. If you want to use seasonings, just be aware that some of them are very high oxalate. But the more that you cut out all this noise, the more peace you will have. And that is just something that I think is true for everyone. How you get there is going to look different, but the less noise, the better, because then you can really trust the signals that your body is sending. At this point in my journey, I can eat a lot of different foods without any reactions. I think I was listening to you talk somewhere and you said you eat French fries occasionally. You just named off some treats that you do maybe like once a year. Well, my version of that is popcorn. I love homemade popcorn with a ton of butter, and I don't react to it. But at the end of the day, I don't crave any variety. I crave meat and fat, animal meat and fat, and salt, a lot of salt. And that's because I've given myself the time to cut out all this noise, support my body at a systemic level, and remove the interference. And that looks different for everyone. There's been one person where I recommended a non-ketogenic approach only because it was too restrictive for her. One person. And I've worked with probably over 500 people now. So those are the basics.
When you talk about keto or fat adapted, what do we really mean by that?
What I mean is that your body has learned the ability to run on fat. So it doesn't have to mean that you are currently in ketosis. It's kind of like riding a bike. When you learn how to ride a bike, you don't forget, but you do get better with time. So I do believe that the longer someone is fat adapted, the more quickly they're going to be able to hop back on the wagon or get back into ketosis if they slip off the wagon. But that's what I mean. And sometimes we have to take, like for example, when I was running on Adderall and I was underweight, I was in fight and flight mode. I was running on adrenaline. I was running on glucose. So to become fat adapted or to get back into ketosis, I started eating butter before I went to bed, in the middle of the night when I woke up because of cortisol, and first thing in the morning. And that was sending the signal to my body that it's in a supported place and it can run on fat. And so I was fat adapted. So that's generally what I mean.
Got it. And can you talk a little bit about your thoughts on fasting?
Yeah.
And yeah, please.
Yeah. I love these questions. So I love fasting, but I have learned firsthand that there is a proper time and place and an improper time and place. When I was underweight and I had gut issues, I turned to fasting. I fasted for 5 days once and I was underweight, but it's because I was in so much pain. I had gastroparesis, diverticulitis, slow transit colon. You can imagine I didn't want to eat. I was in pain. Those 5 days were awesome. I felt high because I was in high ketosis. I didn't have much pain in my body, but guess what? You are going to have to eat again eventually. And so if you're someone who is underweight and you need to gain weight, or you're overcoming digestive issues, it actually might be worse when you have to break that fast. That's not a black and white answer. That's not for everyone, but I'm just saying I made that mistake. I shouldn't have been fasting. I should have figured out, I actually need to cut out the foods that are hurting me in the first place. It's not a solution. I consider it to be a biohack. I love intermittent fasting for anyone, even people that need to gain weight. We need to have insulin low at night so our human growth hormone can go up, serotonin, melatonin. But we also need to practice eating in a way that's not hurting our bodies. And I think too many people believe that's not possible because too many people these days have digestive issues, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, and they just think that no matter what they eat, they're going to have a reaction. And that's not true. It's just what you're eating. And I didn't believe that for a time. So I think that most of us just need to wrap our heads around, am I in the right mindset to be fasting right now? Do you have a good relationship with food already? because if not, I don't think fasting is appropriate.
So the one thing I always believe is that when you're hurting and pain and you're damaged, fasting is one of the best things you can do, because ultimately we're being poisoned. And so you got to
Hmm.
let the poisons pass. But your butter is like one of the very best ideas. I think it's so
Yeah.
important that butter, and eating butter. So this gets back to James Henry Salisbury's work on recognizing that the plants induce the microbes to grow more. And have you ever noticed that butter never grows mold?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I leave my fat out all the time. And everyone's like, isn't that going to go bad? It's a preservative, right?
It's an anti-inflammatory. It
Mm,
suppresses the microbes in the gut, and it protects the glycobiome. So that's
wow.
the point that I think people don't recognize. See,
Wow.
they think this is Occam's razor says it's a simple answer to all of this, right? You ate meat and you got better. And when we say meat, we really are talking about fatty meat, because lean chicken, lean fish, turkey, rabbit. I don't know how many people eat rabbit, but those are all
Yeah.
damaging. Can you tell us a little bit about your thoughts on just people who are eating protein sparing diets of any length of time?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is you're going to crash your hormones. You don't want to do that. When you starve yourself from fat, you're starving your sex hormones. You're starving. I mean, fat is it's what cushions our joints, your skin, your hair. Your thyroid is going to suffer if you're not getting that saturated animal fat. Your brain is going to suffer. So if you want vitality, if you want sustainability, you need to eat fat, animal fat. Um, I think that it's fine to go lower fat for someone who has extra body fat, they're fat adapted, but this does not need to be extreme. I mean, I took someone from like a male from 26% body fat down to like 14 in months. This was not a year, this was months, just by going a little bit lower in fat. He wasn't even to the point where he was protein sparing. He was still eating 100 grams of fat per day. So I just think that when you are hormonally and metabolically healthy, there's never, ever any need to cut back the fat like some of these people are. And then I also think of, I have worked with people who look amazing on social media. These people have tons of followers. They're fitness, influencers, totally shredded, six pack. And then I get on the phone with them and they're like, I'm hangry. I'm mad at everyone. I don't sleep. I have cystic acne that I cover up. They're not happy because they're starving. They're not eating fat. So I also just want people to wrap their heads around, you know what, the ideal body doesn't look like this. It's not rabid starvation. And that's what happens when you starve yourself of fat.
And I think that's a good point, because maybe there's too much of showing these lean muscular bodies, which are atypical to the real human body anyway. And the
Yeah.
amount of time it takes, and I know Robert Sykes talks about how much work he has to do to pretty much starve himself to get
Yeah.
so the muscles show, and the fat doesn't show anymore. But if there's
Yeah.
a famine or you're sick and you don't have fat on your body, you're going to be dead fast.
Absolutely. I just think even your immune system, your central nervous system, I think that when you're not eating enough fat, your body senses that. It senses starvation and it's just going to turn to preservation. You're going to be running on glucose, excess gluconeogenesis, too much cortisol. It goes downhill very quickly. And the human body can withstand so much. I think about everything I've been through and it's like, I can't believe I'm not dead, but that doesn't mean that you should do it. You should never starve yourself of fat for a long period of time. I don't think you should ever starve yourself in the
Right.
first place, unless you're doing a bodybuilding competition.
Or you doing a spiritual fasting, or you're
Yes.
fasting for healing. I have a
Right.
theory. Here, I've got a theory. And my theory is that we never use sugar for energy at all.
Yeah.
We
I've
only use
I've heard you
fat.
say this many times and I love it.
And it's a hard one to get, because we think glucose is our energy, but it's an impossibility, because Because why would you use glucose when fatty acids are in the cytoplasm or the mitochondrial inner cell membranes all the time?
Yeah.
Can we answer that? Does
The
it
only
make any
answer
sense?
that the only thing that comes to mind is oxidative priority. I know that when we drink alcohol, the body prioritizes burning off that alcohol. And then, to my knowledge, after alcohol, if we consume glucose, the body feels it needs to burn the glucose. But
But
um
but if that were true, then our glucose levels will be down to nothing because it would burn glucose all the time. But again, what I'm suggesting in our world of nutrition, we keep on saying the same thing without stopping and stepping back and simply answering the question. Your client that lost all the weight lost weight in what? Muscle, bone, or fat?
fat.
Fat. So people who are starving lose all their fat. Their sugar doesn't go to zero. They don't burn their sugar until it's zero and then say, well, now we have to burn the fat.
Yeah.
There's no other system in the body that would ever do this. All right. But this is the number one thing I think we have most wrong in this. And again, I'm just asking you the question because your mitochondria has fat everywhere. Why would it prioritize sugar?
I can't imagine why. There's no need for it.
There's no reason for it. But you never have to eat plants. So you never have to eat sugar directly, correct?
Right.
So what if eating plants and sugar is simply a poison and all we're doing is poison ourselves? And so every disease you had and I've had and we all have is simply plant poisoning. And that's all it is.
I believe it. More. That makes sense. Do you believe that carbohydrates are a problem, or is it just simply plants?
Well, what's a carbohydrate? See, again, we have these scientific terms that are the conundrum when we go to the doctor and we draw our blood and we look at cholesterol. Still, even in this carnivore world, we're talking about cholesterol levels.
Right.
They're completely irrelevant. They're irrelevant. Yeah. All right. And so as a physician, we're always trying to lower someone's glucose. Okay. Well, we tell them to eat small meals all the time so their glucose level is level, right?
Yeah.
But just stop eating plants, right?
Yeah.
We have no requirement to ever eat a plant, and yet plants are poisonous. So a carbohydrate is a sugar, is a plant. The majority of sugars aren't even sweet. And so again, I'm working the circuit and trying to get us all as nutritionists, right? As scientists, as biohackers, right? Because we make up these terms sometimes because it's kind of the lingo that we use, like keto. Do you recommend measurement for keto? And does everyone have to be in keto and even to be healthy?
No, definitely not. That was one of the things that actually I had to give up as well. I had to stop testing my blood sugar because protein would spike it. I had to stop testing ketones, stop chasing ketones. I didn't care about that. I even dropped the whole high fat thing. I just ate fatty meat. So I'm pretty sure that, when I do CrossFit, I'm going in and out of ketosis, I'm sure. I think that just cutting out the plants is all people need to worry about.
Right. And so while you're running, while you're sleeping, while you're walking, whatever you're doing, the mitochondria in every cell is utilizing acetyl-CoA from a fatty acid, not from a sugar. Because do you have any, and this is another one that's kind of a conundrum in my world is the glycobiome and glycobiology. I don't know if you've heard me talk about that at all.
Not much.
And I'm, what is the function of glucose? What is the function of sugars? Have we figured that out?
I don't think so. I mean, I've heard some people say that there is a small amount of sugar required by the brain. That's all I've heard. I haven't heard of where in the brain, why, but that's what I've heard from some people. And then I'm just talking about, subreddits on Reddit and reading forums and stuff, because I truly believe that we don't need any sugar. I do wonder
Well,
why the body makes its own sugar through gluconeogenesis.
well, we need sugar for glycosylation. Glycosylation is proteins are made and sugars are added to the proteins. Sugars, glucose, galactose, mannose, fucose, and many other sugars. But for some reason, we've highlighted glucose, fructose, and sugars as sort of the energy for the cell. And yet it's for glycosylation. And when we consume sugars in any form, and I was listening to Robert Lustig the other day, I can't remember the name is his recent book, but it's all about sugar is deadly and fructose is deadly. And maybe you could kind of comment on this. And then maybe it's simply all plants, all sugars are deadly. We don't burn sugar as energy, but because we've been brainwashed that it is, we believe that we need to eat it in order to have that quick energy.
Yeah. I think that the problem is that we're damaged. I mean, I think that most people are not metabolically flexible. And so they believe that because, I mean, this is many clients that I work with, they're starting out eating 200 carbs a day. And what happens when you stop eating those carbs? You feel like crap. Your body is in a purgatory of energy. It doesn't know how to burn fat yet. But we were actually designed and created to burn fat primarily. Think you're one. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Well, I was going to say, but what if, once again, just like all the diseases, the autoimmune diseases, all the diseases are plant toxins, and because our bowels are always full of plant toxins, right? So if you eat cereals, pasta, bread, avocados, apples, bananas, kale, honey, fruit 3 times a day, your bowel is always full of these digesting particles, correct?
Yeah.
And so the digesting particles are always secreted in your bloodstream. So they're always damaging your body everywhere. And so we're confused. We misunderstand the mitochondrial production of energy via acetyl-CoA from fat. And we think the value of sugar because Krebs cycle gave us this idea that glucose feeds into the Krebs cycle, but it doesn't. Acetyl-CoA does via pyruvate, which maybe, again, the science sometimes is, I call it snake oil, but maybe plants are strictly poisonous and fat is the only fuel for the mitochondria. We're not fat adapted. We're not metabolically flexible. You're not. You are metabolically rigid because we're all metabolically rigid. Again, I'm throwing some such ideas that because doesn't everyone heal? Everyone heals when they go fatty carnivore.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I totally agree. This is something I wanted to share for whatever reason it came into my mind, is that we are all fearfully and wonderfully made. What happened to me is a miracle, but everyone actually was created. You are a miracle. The fact that you're alive is a miracle. We're just hurting ourselves with our nutrition. If people ate the right way, the way we were designed to eat, you would thrive. I truly believe that.
And we get caught up in all this snake oil science that we're all propagating in some way that makes it difficult for 99% of the humans out there to even understand what we're talking about.
Yeah.
How do we simplify?
I can see the frustration on your face.
No, I'm not. I'm not. I'm in a quandary and a conundrum. We are not metabolically flexible. Our bodies are mammalian cells. All of our cells are the same. We're not metabolically different. We're psychologically brainwashed into believing we're all different, but we're all the same.
Exactly. And that psychological factor can really impact someone. Some people need the variety. So it's like, I'm going to give you the easiest poison to process. That's my approach, truthfully speaking.
Yes. And also, don't you think that you're taking people where they're at to keep them on a path, because ultimately they're not going to get on your path if you don't work with them in a way they can be fed the information.
Exactly. Even my husband, when I met him, he was so inflamed. He was living on cheesecake, cinnamon rolls, fast food every day. I still fell in love with him. But when he started to transition to keto, we went to Costco together, and I would recommend him things that I would never recommend him now, only because I knew he needed that bridge. It was not about perfection. You know, he ate things with seed oils, but it was less sugar and less carbs. And in my mind, it's like, this is no better, but this is getting him off the sugar. And it helped. It worked. So it's just step by step. It's different for everyone. There are people that I work with who are like, I can do whatever you tell me to do. And I love that. I mean, they're doing my job for me. It's like, this is easy. It's all psychological.
It's all psychological. And someone on my blog today was talking about the psychological benefits of this nutritional way. Maybe you could talk about that.
It's everything to me. I mean, I mentioned earlier I had mood disorders and they were so severe. Just the fact that this is my job, just the fact that I can be doing this interview with you is a miracle. I was super ADHD, OCD. Like I said, I pulled out my own eyelashes. I had constantly repeating songs in my head that I wasn't even listening to. It was hard to function. It was hard to go into a grocery store. And eating this way, it's just, I took all that noise and I threw it out and I unlocked my potential. I'm here doing things that I never even dared to dream that I could do. And it's simply because I decided to remove the interference and provide the proper foundation. So in terms of mood, it's really easy to have a good mood when I feel great, when I don't wake up in pain. I'm excited to wake up. I wake up without an alarm at 4:30 in the morning. And I'm like, this is awesome. I'm great getting up because I'm supporting my body. This is how we were designed. So that's the most simple answer is it's easy to be happy. It's easy to feel good when you feel good. I just had to stop poisoning myself.
Tell us a little bit about your daily routine. Do you exercise? What type of exercise do you do? And what's your daily nutritional recommendations that you do, whether it's one meal, 3 meals, and what do you usually eat?
So currently I do CrossFit 5 to 6 days per week. I'm always pushing myself. There will be days where I didn't sleep as well and I don't push myself. I do listen to my body, but I like pushing myself. I go to the gym because it's therapy to me. I actually usually rest on Sundays, but I went to the gym today just because I knew I was having this interview and I wanted my thoughts to flow the way I like them to flow. And exercise does that. And I'm currently eating 1 to 2 meals per day. I think that really just depends on the season I'm in. I just went through a miscarriage. I was pregnant. So when I became pregnant, I switched from OMAD to 2MAD. Actually, right before I became pregnant, it was intuitive. There was something that told me I just need to start eating more. It was before I found out I was pregnant. And I wanted to gain some weight. I was actually really lean, really fit. I had the body that a lot of people would say they want to have, but it's like, I'm not hitting PRs at the gym. I want to get stronger. So I started eating more. Now I'm not pregnant anymore and I'm just being sure that I eat enough. So for me, that's 1 gram of protein per pound of desired body weight. So I usually eat at least 130 grams of protein per day. I exceed that very frequently. And then fat just varies based on how I feel. When I was pregnant, I tracked the fat. I needed to be sure that this baby was going to have a healthy central nervous system. And I just eat what I crave now. But when I first started out, I couldn't listen to my cravings. I was craving keto treats. So I was eating very fatty meat. I was eating multiple times per day because I needed to gain weight. Um,
You were eating what?
I was eating just very fatty meat when I first started carnivore, multiple times per day. I was not doing one meal a day. But I will say halfway through my healing journey at about 104 pounds, that's when the pandemic happened. I couldn't go to the gym anymore. I was losing my appetite without that exercise at the gym. So I switched to OMAD, one meal a day, and I still gained weight on OMAD. I gained all the way up to 155. And then it dropped back down and it just stabilized around 125. So that's a long-winded answer, but currently I'm eating 1 to 2 meals a day, trying to stick with 2 meals just because I did OMAD for a long time. And I just want to give my body also the support to become pregnant again, because now we really know that we want children.
So what now, I don't know what a gram is. So
Oh,
I measure things because most people don't know what a gram is, nor do they, it's sort of these ideas. I always say, well, how much
yeah.
meat do you eat? I do about a fistful of food a day and about half fat and half protein. That's sort of my go-to. Might it be 2? Might it be half? It might be, but about a fistful a day, which keeps my weight. I didn't even measure. I didn't even weigh myself. I didn't even know what it is. But you have to have fat to be fertile. And polar bears, but all animals must be fat to be fertile. And we know that anorexia and bulimia and these food disorders contribute to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so when you say, so I'm just trying to understand, it's how many grams of protein do you eat and how many grams of fat do you eat?
Probably 130 to 145 grams of protein, and fat anywhere between 80 and 230, depending on the day. I mean, when we go to Fogo, I will eat almost 5 pounds of meat, fatty meat. I'm getting the lamb chops, the ribeye. I'll eat probably 12 steaks. They don't cut it at our plate. They give us the whole steaks because they know us. But when I'm at home, I don't eat like that. Usually 1 to 2 pounds of meat. And I'm adding butter if I'm eating something like veal or goat because it's lean. And I'm hungry for the fat.
And which suppresses inflammation in the gut, because I believe we need less protein than we eat.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I totally agree.
We probably need a small portion of protein and a large portion of fat. If that's, and most animals, I still bet most carnivores don't eat daily. And I still believe fasting is the best way to be fertile, because the digestion is damaging to the digestive tract, which can affect the glyco and microbiome, which I think can contribute to inflammation in intra-ovarian, intrauterine, and all these other things. So I always tell my pregnant women early, don't eat if you have any nausea, vomiting, because your body is basically saying, I need to protect this baby, because the plant world basically wants to kill you and your fetus and your reproduction. That's why men's sperm counts are dropping, morphology is dropping, sexual dysfunction is on the rise, pelvic pain, erectile dysfunction are all growing because of a plant-based low animal fat diet. It's really growing out there.
Yeah, you're the first person that mentioned the nausea. I didn't have severe symptoms, but I would get nauseous, and I heard from so many people, that means you need to eat. That means you're hungry. And I was like, I didn't force myself to eat. And that really rubbed me the wrong way, how many people told me that.
Well, that's one of the problems, I think. And you mentioned your cravings. Maybe tell us a little bit about your cravings and how that affected you, and how maybe we can learn to understand that. Maybe, I always say we all must be addicted to food, because if you're not, you're dead, right? To voluntarily say, I'm not going to eat for a year, is not good. And ultimately, the search for food is natural, because if you and I had to go search for food and there wasn't a market or a farm nearby, we'd probably have a tough time.
Yeah, Absolutely. I think that we crave what we eat. That's something that really clicked with me, and it gave me confidence that I could get off of the foods that I was addicted to, even the keto foods. I would crave things like the coconut manna, the coconut butter, all the keto treats, hyper palatable sweet things all the time. And I wanted to be free from that. And I think it really boiled down to getting the nutrition that I needed. I was truly malnourished. I wasn't absorbing nutrients. And so I think that really made the cravings worse. And then by getting off of those hyperpalatable foods, I gave my body a chance. I say this over and over, but I got rid of the noise. And then it's like the signals become clear. All I crave is meat and fat. That is the best tasting thing to me. You could give me the best keto looking treats, or I make carnivore cinnamon rolls, brownies, ice cream. I'm fine without those. When I first started, they were helpful for me to eat more food because I needed to gain weight. But I'm totally fine without them. Even when I make videos for them, it's like, I don't really need any of this. I just want meat and fat. And I think it's because my body now knows that the nutrients are in the meat and the fat. I've associated feeling awesome with eating meat and fat and cutting out these other things. I think it's
Yeah.
just, it's something that clicks when you do it for long enough. It's consistency. It clicks. It makes sense. This is how life is. If you do something over and over, or just like going to CrossFit, I don't wake up and every morning and feel like going, but I've done it enough to know I never regret it. And so I look forward to it. So it's the same thing with eating this way. I know that the benefits, I know it's what I want. I want to function. I want to love my life. I want to feel good. And that is 100% associated with what I put in my mouth.
So the brainwashing, so this is retraining, that basically we've been trained to eat deadly, damaging, addictive products. And I always say we've been taken out of the lion's lair and put into a pig pen.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's take the pigs out of the pig pen, and we're like, whoa, this is a lion. Why are we feeding this lion pig food, which keeps us domesticated and down and in drudgery and requiring the doctors and the drugs, which
Yes.
nearly killed you as a child?
Yeah. Yeah. And my whole life. I mean, like I said, those medications stole my personality. They were just helping me to function. I was like a zombie, and I only got worse and worse. And I just think about how different my life would be. I would probably, I mean, I don't know. I'm very grateful that God took this ugly mess and turned it into something beautiful, but it stole years from my life. And I look around me and I see people, in the grocery stores, just people out in public, and it's like I see them in pain. I see them suffering. I see people suffering from depression, and just it's like it's so easy. It's really so simple.
So tell us a little bit about your coaching and your retreats, and how important it is to have a coach, a cheerleader, a mentor
Mm.
on this mission.
I think that it's invaluable. So when I was going through what I went through, I made a consultation with someone in the carnivore space. I won't use their name, but it was $900 for 1 hour. And that is more than what I charge for an entire month, because I realize what people need after going through it. I need someone who's going to be there other than that 1 hour that I pay for. So what I do is I'm on call for all my clients. I give you my phone number. You can text me, you can email me. I'm going to be there. If you want to schedule another call, I'll be there. And so I only take on so many people because I realize the value of having someone really come alongside you, walk alongside you, and hold your hand. Sometimes people just need to vent. When you're breaking a bad habit, you need accountability, and you also need to be able to talk about it. You need to be able to whine like a baby. I'm not going to enable you to continue the behavior, but I'll listen and I won't judge you because I've been there. So I think it's invaluable. The accountability, like we all have our goals, but I also think there's value in paying someone. I used to be just dirt cheap and allow people to defer payment for up to 2 years. I got a lot of people that didn't take my advice. They just ditched me. They never paid me. I was like, what the heck? And then I realized people are going to actually do what you tell them to do when they pay the money up front. It's just how, it makes sense. You're investing in your health. So there's value there as well. So that's what I offer is one-on-one coaching. I do sometimes work with families or, father and daughter packages. I'm happy to do that. I do sometimes travel. If you need someone to literally clean out your pantry and go shopping with you, I'll do that. I'm up for it, but that is my primary job is one-on-one coaching. And I just meet people where they're at. I am a health and life coach because I believe that behavioral changes are equally as important. Like we said, it's mostly psychological. The answer is very simple, but achieving that and making it sustainable and getting through all these hurdles that we've created just from existing on this planet is a lot of work. There can be a lot of trauma involved. I'm going to pray with you. I'm going to pray for you. If you don't want to pray, if that's not your thing, we don't have to. But I want to be there for people in all the ways that they're needed, spiritually, mentally, physically. And then my retreats, I host 2 per year in the fall and spring. I'm going to do it so long as God provides to do it. I will say I haven't really made profit so far, so my prices are going up a little bit because I want to keep doing this. There is something so cool about being with other carnivores in person, being surrounded by people where you have the like-mindedness of, okay, like I want to get all the noise and crap out of my life and I want to go home empowered with the tools and understanding to do this. And every single person that I get to meet is just the best thing in the world to be able to serve people and bring people together. People need a tribe. It's different when you go home and you have a real face to associate with a name. You spent time with this person, you hugged them in real life. It gives you so much more momentum every day when you're having doubts or you're having cravings to go get donuts or something. It just becomes real. And it's just awesome. I get to share my favorite foods, Billy Doe meats, cook for people, share my recipes, and have special guests like yourself. That's a huge honor.
What's the date of the next meetup?
May
retreat?
11th through 16th.
And
that's going to be at North Myrtle Beach.
And I know I've been invited. I don't know that I could stay the whole time, but I'm looking to come for at least a day and maybe a night and a day. And I'm really excited about that. But I don't think we've finalized a date yet for me, but I know it's coming. And I'm really excited about it because I agree with you. We're looking for a conversation that motivates us and that gives us the simplicity of this healing method.
Yes, exactly. I have so many people. I mean, I would say 75% of these people that show up walk away at some point in tears telling me this is what I needed. Now I can stop this behavior that I've been struggling with. It's just being there in person and having those conversations.
You mentioned spirituality and prayer. Can you tell us a little bit about how important that is in life, whether you believe in God or not?
Yeah, definitely. I think that having a why is really important. And I think that, at least this is my personal opinion, a lot of people might not agree, but if my why were just about me losing weight or having some type of body, it wouldn't be enough for me to follow through with what I need to do to achieve the best life for me. My why has to be for and about something greater than myself. And so, like, my why to gain weight and get healthy was my niece. I wanted her to see me as a healthy human being. I had an example, like, how sad would it be if I just died because I was emaciated? My niece would have to live with that memory. When I made that my why, it was a lot easier to be consistent. I looked outside of myself. Yes, I did visualization. I saw myself as a healthy woman, but I also had to think about, God created me for so much more, to serve and love others. And I can't be connected to that calling. I can't be connected to the calling of living my best life without praying to that higher power. I can't connect. I don't believe the universe is God. I don't believe I'm God, but I believe that God is within us. And we need to understand that, and we need to connect to the higher power.
Mm.
And that is what calls me to live life to my fullest. That's what keeps gratitude practice. If you focus on something bigger than yourself, then it allows you to look past all of your struggles and issues. What we focus on grows. Where the mind goes, the man follows. So if you are praying every day and focusing on positive things and where you want to go instead of where you are or where you've been, you'll get there. So whatever you believe in, prayer absolutely is very important. I think meditation can look different from person to person, but we need something bigger than ourselves.
Very critical in life. I always say faith is the first thing you want to focus on. And whether you're a vegan, vegetarian, Mediterranean, or carnivorian, it really doesn't matter. If you're suffering, you want to start with understanding and plugging into the power of God and the universe within all things.
Yes, that's definitely.
Tell us any last minute thoughts and ideas. You said you had some notes. Did we cover all the important things in your notes?
We covered better things. I love this discussion.
Is there anything else you wanted to ask me, maybe, or any thoughts and ideas?
I'm actually interested in your spiritual life. I know that you're a spiritual person, and what is your idea of God, and what does your prayer life look like?
Well, I was raised in a Christian Catholic household, although kind of fell away from it in my early adolescence. And then as a doctor, I became to believe that I became sort of more of an atheistic feeling there wasn't a God and science explained everything, until maybe in my late 30s, my early 40s, I began to question science and question the concept of God. And as I read and suffered, I reconnected with the philosophy of Jesus and that God is within all of us. And so ultimately, God is us. We are the gods of the universe, because we are our brains, our minds. Because I had to put the science and the spirit together, and basically, the mind is the master of your reality. And if you can tap into the most amazing concepts, whether it's Buddha, Lao Tse, Muhammad, Moses, Jesus, David, it doesn't matter. God is within all of us. And the words of practicing meditation and prayer and breath work and positivity. And I use the word positivity because if you can imagine that God creates everything in our favor, we would never look at anything with any ill thought, because God's always working for us. So every punishment, pain, troubles is actually a piece of the puzzle of your treasured life. Yeah. And so I read everything, but for me, it's infinite sort of, I do about 3 meditative prayer moments a day. I kind of call it my nap. I do 3 naps a day on average. It's about 5 to 10 minutes, and it's about being grateful to God and everything that God has brought me. And I read the Quran, the New, the Old Testament. I read them all because, again, it's all our human belief systems. And if someone, I always ask the question, do you believe in God? And then many people say, well, no. And then I said, well, do you believe in yourself? Well, yes. I said, well, then you believe in God, because we're the gods. And again, I'm as much God as you are God. And everything ultimately is part of that, because our mind creates a story, and that story is God's work. And so that's my practice. I'm in church always because I believe that and heaven is all upon us. And if you want to live a day in hell, that's your choice. Yeah. But I don't think that the Jesus words that I read makes it hell. But the humans in our controlling nature as dictators, as popes, presidents, professors, all kind of dictate and a diatribe of like, I know better than you and just follow my rules. And I think that's where we get into trouble. And so
that was beautifully stated. We are very similar, very similar.
And because I think all of us are similar, even when we say we don't believe in God, or I believe in this God or that God. Ultimately,
Yeah.
we look at someone, we listen, we smile, namaste, inshallah, shalom, whatever the words are that we're learning. Because again, whether you're vegan, vegetarian, Mediterranean, or carnivorian, it really doesn't matter. But we are working to heal people in prayer, in medicine. I mean, most doctors they don't talk about God.
Yeah.
And we can't leave God out of this story and this journey. It's got to be the most important part.
I love that. That's awesome.
How do people find you, Rebekah?
I'm very active on Instagram at Tailored Keto Health. My name is not Taylor, it's Rebekah. And that's, I'm most active there. My website is tailoredketo.health. And then I have a YouTube channel. I'm pretty active there now. And that's at Rebekah Heishman, Tailored Keto Health.
And the tailored is meaning that you're tailoring it individually for every human's personal needs.
Exactly. I'm meeting you where you're at, and we're going to make this work for you.
And we're going to return all the lions back to the lair.
Yes.
Amen. They're going to gain the majestic nature of us lions, that we don't need a keto treat. We recognize that we are metabolically solid. We are metabolically fat adapted forever, since the day we were conceived and beyond. So that's the fun part. Maybe we talk about this another time also, and
I'd love to.
So many ideas to talk about. And so May 11th through 16th, I'll make sure we get those dates solid for you, and we'll put a link on this conversation to our website, more about that, and go from there. And always, I'm a mom, I'm a parent, and I am healthy. Those are important words to share.
Awesome.
God bless
you so much.
God bless you. I look forward to and anything I can do, you let me know. I look forward to maybe doing another one of these before May.
I would love to.
I mean, we switch off, and that's so good for all of us. So to everyone out there, really a pleasure. And thanks for listening.
Thank you.
And to Rebekah, Tailored Health, God bless you.
Thank you. God bless you.
All right. Bye, Rebekah. Have a great one. Where do you live, by the way?
I'm in Illinois.
Illinois. So let's see, it is, what time is it here? 12. Are you 11:30?
11:30. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Are you still in real estate?
No, I mean, I have my license. I would have to renew it. I wanted to work closer to people. But we've thought about getting back into it, my husband and I, for sure.
Well, so I'm kind of a little diverse. I mean, although my primary job is medical, but this part I love. This is the most fun I've ever had in life, I think, besides getting into my pottery studio, making cups and stuff. So
that's so cool. Yeah, you just seem to be I don't know how you have time to do all that you do, but it's awesome.
Let's see, are you 30 yet?
30. I'm about to turn 30.
All right. So I'm 66, about to turn 67 in March.
Wow. You look awesome.
And so, well, and that's the part I've learned, that, wow, I'm like 67 almost. I've never felt so good on this crazy carnivore stuff. It is radical, right?
Yeah.
And
I've never felt this good.
And so, why it works, but I have one child, she's 34. I work and I do this, and I like to fly airplanes. I don't fly that much, but I still like to. And, but you'll find our eclectic nature, just like you got into this keto carnivore space, is pretty rocking amazing. So.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's such an honor.
Right. Enjoy your day. I'm honored also. And I look forward to us joining forces together a little bit more. Ready. God bless.
For sure.
All right.
God bless you. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.